All right, I'm Mike Cayse, Captain on Heavy Rescue 9, and this is the station for the Rapid Assessment Team, or RAT Team's Company Officer, okay? What I've handed you is a cheat sheet here for the RAT Company Officer to refer to when he gets to an incident, to help just be a memory jogger, if you will. That sheet, along with two other ones, these two right here, will be kept in the back of the district buggy. So if you don't have yours, you don't have it, or don't want it, or whatever, there will be one in the back of his car that you can pull out and refer to it. Just make sure you get the right one. There are three of them. An incident commander one, a RAT commander one, and then the RAT company officer one. The RAT company officer one is for pre-Mayday. The other two for the incident commander and RAT commander are post-Mayday, okay? They are located, if you want your own copy, on the S drive in the training folder. Just go to the S drive under training and you can pull off your own copy, okay? All right, so we're gonna refer to that in a minute. 3/4 of the way down on that sheet right here, next to the spilled coffee, is a gray box. In that gray box is 4 priorities. The 4 priorities that we're gonna refer back to when we talk about removing egress barriers here in a second, okay? All right, with that said, the next thing we're going to do is talk about the RAT response to everyday structure fires in the Cincinnati Fire Department. Number one, you get a RAT company that has 4 or 5 people on it, and you get a safety engine that has 4 or 5 people on it, and you get a safety officer. All of that is there to help make our fire grounds safer for our guys working on the incident. The safety engine, if you are the officer of the safety engine, you and one other person that you choose, anybody you want on that engine with you, are in charge of accountability. That's what you do, your accountability. Your sole job, your only job when you're there, is to make sure that you can account for every single person and every single company on that incident scene at all times. If you can't do that, you should be in the process of trying to figure out where that person is. For engine companies, it's a little bit easier because they're tied to a hose line, they're not as mobile, and if they're working the first floor, they're staying the first floor most of the time. They move, but not as quick and not as often. Your truck companies and your rescues that split up, that are on multiple floors, they're harder to keep track of, but that does not relieve you as the safety engine officer working accountability for that function. The other part of that is when the officer of that safety engine goes to the district chief's buggy, pops open that back of that buggy and opens up the computer screen, and he's using that computer program that tracks people on there. That program only tracks SCBAs when they've been charged and turned on. If they're not on and not charged, you can't track that company or that person there. So the way we get around that is the company passport. The company passports are gathered, brought to the safety engine, or brought to behind the buggy, and they're placed on that passport board, and you track by writing where they are at that point, okay? The problem with that is we don't always collect or get all of our passports. We don't always know what companies are there. Companies could be on the back side of a building, they could be parked a block away. Second alarm companies might not bring their passport to you. So it's very important that as the accountability officer, you go to the dispatch screen on our MDCs and you look at every company assigned to that incident and you track to make sure you have a passport for every single one of those companies. As the incident grows, the complexity of that and difficulty in that grows, okay? But it does not relieve you of the responsibility to identify the companies that are on the scene, including staff officers and everything else like that, and track their location at all times. If you don't know where they're at, you have to ask where they're at. Now, anybody that's done that job knows it's easier said than done, all right? It's very difficult to do that. But one of the things that we can do to make it easier is that we follow the procedure that we wrote in 2002 that says when you get on the radio, you announce your location as part of your radio broadcast, right? So I say, engine 31, second floor, seaside to command, I need a second line up here. You know, ladder 3, third floor, alpha side to command, I'm bringing a victim down the stairs. You do these things, you incorporate your location into your radio call, and it makes accountability by the safety engine a whole lot more easier, because now he doesn't have to stop, waste valuable radio time, and ask, engine 31, what is your location? Does that make sense? So I am a huge offender of that rule. I wrote that rule in 2002, and I am probably one of the worst at it. So make absolute sure that you attempt to and do incorporate that into your everyday ops. And I've had people come through this group that say, hey, you know, I forget it all the time, but I heard somebody else on the fire ground do it, and it reminded me that maybe I should be doing it. So what I'm saying is, be that guy that reminds everybody else they should be doing it, and start your transmissions with that, okay? It makes, those of you that have done the safety engine job, it makes it a whole lot easier. Okay, with that said, you're the safety engine. We'd already covered that you and one other person on that safety engine are gonna do accountability. We talked about kind of how that's done. The next part of that is, two of you, or two of the people from that safety engine that are not doing accountability are gonna go where? To the RAT team, right? They're going right to the RAT company. So that then takes that RAT company staffed at 4 up to 6, right? And it's really better than what it used to be when one person from that RAT company had to do accountability by himself. So the issue with that is those two people on that safety engine are usually the roughnecks in the back, right? It could be a roughneck and a driver. It's up to that officer to decide that. But the issue with it is they may have no idea who the RAT company is, or they may be new kids that have no idea, you know, who that guy is that's in charge of that RAT company. So if you're the officer of the safety engine, you look at your two roughnecks and you say, that guy over there, that's RAT 18's officer. Go to him and stay with him and don't come back until the fire's over. And make sure he does that. But conversely, if you're RAT 18's officer, you need to at some point be expecting those two people to come to you during this fire. And if they don't, you need to go back to this officer and say, where are your two guys? I don't know where they're at, because now we have an accountability issue as to where they're at. And understand them back at that accountability board, those two names are now associated with that RAT company, even though their helmet ID might say something different. Everybody tracking? Okay, let's go to the next step. Today, we're going to look at this building here, and we're going to say that this is our building for this scenario. We're only going to discuss RAT operations for a single family dwelling, okay? There are all kinds of different factors to consider when you deal with multifamily dwellings, you deal with high rises, commercial structures, even high rises. You have a huge difference between how you do RAT in a building like the Carew Tower that's all brick and solid, and a building like the Great American Tower that is all steel frame, okay? But today, we're only dealing with a single family dwelling. For our size up that we're going to do in a minute, that structure right there, what you see is what you get. We're not adding anything different to it. So in this case, in this building, the windows that have orange dots on them represent fire blowing out those windows, okay? That's what when you do your size up, that's what you have. The smoke that you see from the smoke machines that we put inside there is the smoke that you see coming out of that building for our scenario and our size up. Don't make stuff up. Don't say I have smoke here or there. What you see is what you get. The hose lines going into the building are the fire ops going on at the current time for your size up. Nothing else, okay? So just remember that when I ask you to give me a size up, what you see is what you get for your size up. Okay, and the next part of that is, we are really, really good on this fire department, and as most firemen are all over the country, at reading a building and figuring out where things are inside of that structure, right? So I can look at a building and tell you, just by looking at it, most probably where the stairs are, where the bathrooms are, where the bedrooms are, all of that kind of stuff, right? So if I see a window halfway between the second floor and the first floor windows, what does that typically tell me? It's a stairwell, right? And that's typically like a landing area or whatever, but they're usually smaller. They might even be stained glass or whatever, but that typically will give you an idea, looking at from the outside, where the stairs are. That's not a 100% rule, but it's a really good rule of thumb to keep in mind, right? How do I recognize maybe where a bathroom is in a house?
Usually has a vent pipe.
Vent pipes are another good way to do it, right above it, yep, or nearby it. What's another way to recognize a bathroom location?
The windows could be fogged.
Yeah, frosted like type glass, yep, so that you can't see it.
Come out of all of my soffits. I
Yep.
don't have any vents out of my
Yeah, that's why it's a rule of thumb, yep, exactly. But they're also smaller. So if I get, like if you look at this house here, I got, down this row here, I got 3 bigger windows and a smaller window. So that could either be a kitchen potentially, or it could be a bathroom, all right? But I have that. These are the kind of things that I'm doing as I do my size up to read the outside of this building. If I don't see those windows and the halfway points between floors, that probably tells me my stairwell is not on exterior walls, that I probably have a center core stairwell, which is what we have here, okay? So there are multiple ways, and we're not going to go through all of them, but there are multiple ways that you can look at a building and determine where things are, and potentially and probably the route that people are going to take to get to where they need to be in that structure. Does that all that make sense? Okay. Now let's talk about size ups. Every company should be doing their own type of a size up when they get there, especially the first two of each type company. The engine, the truck, and the rat company all should be doing size ups, as well as the district chief when they first get there. All right? So I like to use an acronym called Above Fire. ABOVEF, Above Fire. And I have a little cheat sheet here, and we'll look at it to help you with that acronym. Each one of those letters in the Above Fire acronym represents something that you need to be aware of and know about in your 360 and your size up of the structure. This acronym works no matter what type of company you're on, whether you're on an engine, a truck, or a rat, or you're the district chief doing your size up. The coffee stains are part of that acronym, all right? So that means it's well used and been well loved. All right, so A in the Above Fire acronym is for access, or in this case it says alternate entrances, but it's access. These are the normal ways in and out of a structure. If I'm on an engine company, A becomes important because I'm going to walk around, do my 360, locate the fire, find the normal ways in, and figure out what the best way to get into that building and to the fire is. If I'm on a truck, I'm looking at what's the best way for me to get to where I need to be to either effect rescue for victims or to force the entry for the engine to get in there, or are there other ways in that structure through fire escapes or other ways to the roof, that kind of stuff. So A becomes critical for us. B in the Above Fire is building. So I want to know about that building. If I'm an engine officer, that's important to me because if I recognize this is a balloon frame structure, I now know that I could potentially have fire on multiple floors. Or if I recognize this as a, this is now, I see two front doors, I know that I probably have a split family or a two family or whatever. So these are all critical issues for us. From the rat standpoint, as I'm doing my 360, this is important because we're looking at what are the good things and the bad things that affect the rat officer when he does his 360 size up. In this case, if I look at this structure, I've got, from the rat standpoint, I have a good structure. It's pretty solid, it's pretty intact. I don't have to worry about it falling apart on me. I have porch roofs that are good areas of refuge that are there in case somebody has to bail out. I have multiple ways in and out of this thing on all four sides. So I have a good building to work at from a rat standpoint. O, whether you're on an engine, a truck, or the rat company, represents fireground operations. What are the operations here? So when I look at this building now, I have 3 hose lines going through that front door. That tells me I have probably 3 engine companies working inside of that structure. All right, so anywhere from 6 to 9 people working inside that structure at this present time that I need to, at a minimum, be worried about, okay? But it also tells me when I look at it, all 3 of those lines are charged, they have water to them, and that's a good thing for us as far as our size and what we need. If you're an engine company officer, that lets you know, well, maybe my line as the 4th line in might need to go a different route to get inside there. If you're a truck officer, you know, hey, I've got water moving its way towards a fire, and you can listen and hear, are they putting water on the fire, and how that affects your ops. From the rat standpoint, like I said, we know that we can adjust how many people are in there and what's going on inside there. V are victims. Again, from the engine standpoint, I need to know victims because every textbook in the country, and the right thing to do is they tell you put the fire line between the victim and the fire, right? So if the victim's here and the fire's here, the fire line goes here. I'm cutting off that fire from my victim, all right? From the truck standpoint, I need to know where they are, so I need to know how to get in there and get to them. From the rat standpoint, I need to know where they are because it's going to give me an idea of what route and what direction my crews on the inside are going to go to get to that victim in case something goes bad. Now I know where to start because I know where they're headed, okay? E, this is the most important part of that whole size up for the rat company. This is the escape routes, the egress routes. You, in your 360, need to decide what are all the ways out of this building. Every single way I can see to get out of this building. And then in doing so, each one of those egress routes that you identify, decide if it has a impediment or barrier to egress. All right? And then put that in the back of your head, and we're going to come back later after we've identified the egress route, after we've decided if it has a barrier to it, and we're going to prioritize it based on that sheet I just gave you a minute ago. All right? This is critical. Your single role, that the only thing you do prior to a Mayday being declared as a rat company is to identify all the egress routes and remove the barriers. so that when you go inside there, you're crawling around inside there, and all of a sudden you decide it's time to get out. Things are bad. I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like what I'm feeling. I need to get out, and I need to get out now. No matter where you go, the rat company's already been there and removed that barrier. So if it's a window, you can bail out without any problem. If it's a door that's unlocked, and you can get out without any problem. If it's a second floor window, there's a ladder there already for you. So you remove those barriers. Understand that there are multiple types of barriers to egress, tons of them. There's elevation is a barrier, but so are bars on windows, so are boarded up doors and boarded up windows. So is vegetation blocking windows, all right? So there's a ton of different things that could be considered a barrier. A window air conditioning unit is a barrier to you getting out. So those are all the kind of things that we need to consider as part of our size up on the E side, the egress and exit route. And finally, fire. Where's the fire and where is it going? That will affect us because when we start identifying our priorities, the location of the fire plays a role in identifying those priorities. Everybody copying that? Okay, let's now go to the sheet I gave you, and let's look at the 4 priorities that are on that sheet, okay? Priority number 1, once you've identified the egress routes and barriers, you go to this priority list. And priority number 1 is always the roof, all right? Always the roof. Because the companies working the roof went up there by one route, usually the ladder that they put up there to go. If that ladder gets compromised, fire blows out a window and it envelops that ladder so they can't go underneath or onto it, or the roof starts caving in right where they put their ladder, they have no way off that roof now, all right? So your number 1 priority is to give them a second way off the roof. If their ladder's in the A-B corner, you put your ladder, your second way off, remote from that corner. Don't put it right next to theirs. That way, your ladder and their ladder won't both be compromised. So always give them a second way off. That's your number 1 priority. If the second truck has already put a stick up remote from that, then you can wipe that off your priority because it's already been done for you by a fire company already on the scene. If you're arriving in a rat truck and you can shoot the roof, absolutely. If they're going to be using a roof, go ahead and shoot it and give them even a third way off if you want to, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. But once that's been done, we drop down to our second priority. Priority number 2 is where the fire is and where they're going in. That space in between there, if something happens and their exit gets cut off, you need to be able to give them another way out. So if the fire's here and the entranceway in is here, that's why we need to be able to read the building. So I have an idea now of how they might be going to get there. I'm going to give them another way out. So I might need to just take a window, get a window air conditioning unit out of it. If they're going to a second floor fire, I might be putting a ladder up for them to remove that barrier. There might be bars on that window, it might be boarded up, but I'm removing everything between the fire and where they came in. I'm removing that barrier. That's the number 2 priority.
Okay, can I ask you
Yes, sir.
So say if you were removing that air conditioning, would you immediately close the door and kind of stand by just so you control the growth of the
Okay,
fire?
so the question is, if I take the air conditioning unit off now, do I want to close that so that I don't have air movement going through there and moving the fire? And we're going to talk about that in a minute, and that's a critical point. When you do these functions, what you don't want to do is introduce air movement into the structure, because what you do by doing that is you're trying to protect their means of egress, and if you open up that air movement, you draw fire, smoke, and heat to that means of egress, and that's not what you want to do. So your point is very good in that you don't want to do anything that causes air to continue to move through that structure, all right? So you would close it if you could, block it off if you could with something that can just be pushed out of the way. And when we go to the back of the building, I'm going to give you an example of that. Okay, so that was priority number 2. Priority number 3 is above the fire. We did the numbers. 17 of the 35 to 40 some odd people that are on the first alarm in the Cincinnati Fire Department are inside of the structure. The rest are outside supporting it. 17 of them have immediate tasks inside of the structure. Of that 17, a big chunk of them are going above the fire. Mostly it's your trucks doing a search, your rescues are told in their procedures to go to the second or the floor above the fire. It's maybe the second or third hose line getting above it and covering the exposures of it or whatever, but there's a big chunk of people going up there. Because of that, we need to protect them. So where the fire is, put ladders up above that fire so that they have an additional way out of that structure. In our example of this building, if that fire flashes on that first floor, with this center core stairwell, it's going to run that stairwell and cut off their egress the same way they came in there. So having that ladder above the fire is a way for them to get out. All right. Next, the last priority is where the fire is and the back side of it, if you will. All right, it kind of worded weird in there, but what it boils down to is look where the fire is and look on the back side. So if companies came in and they shot past the fire to do a search or get it all clear or look for extension or whatever, and now that fire takes off or the floor collapses below them or something to that effect, they need to be able to get out on the back side. So most houses, most homes have front and back doors. So one of the first things you want to do is get to that back door and get that opened up for them. It might have a padlock on the outside. Who knows? Some of these homes are really boarded up and are definitely secured. So you want to get that out. So if they decide I need to get out and get out now, they can get out the back way. All right? So those are your 4 priorities. All right? Okay, so we went over the above F acronym. We talked about the 4 priorities. We talked about reading the building. What we're going to do now is we're going to take this building as our example, if you will, and we're going to do 60 to 120 second, 1 to 2 minute walk around, just like you would if you were doing a 360 size up on a fire. And we're going to use those letters and do our rat size up of this structure with what it shows us right here. All right, and what we're gonna, when we're done doing that, you guys are gonna meet me on the C side of the structure, on the porch that's back there, and we're gonna discuss what we found and what we discovered, and then we're gonna spend a little bit of extra time on what we see on the C side. All right, so if you would take those, leave them here, do your walk around, and meet me in 120 seconds on that porch on the back side of this structure. You did your 360. It should have taken you less than a minute, minute and a half, whatever. No different than if you're on a fire company, right? But your intent here, what letter did I say was most important for the rat companies? E for egress, yeah. That's on the above fire acronym, the E for egress is the most important one. So when you did your 360 here, what you should have seen is you should have noticed that there are routes in and out of this building on all 4 sides, no matter where you got. So if you're a rat company, you can get in on all 4 sides of this. But you should have also noticed that there are tons of windows on all 4 sides of this. Every single room in this house has at least 2, if not 4 windows in it, okay? Another thing you should have noticed is that on the front of the house and on the C side of the house right here and on the D side of the house over there, there are porch roofs over there, okay? Those porch roofs, some of them are larger than the others, some of them are slanted, some of them are flat, but what they do is provide somebody on the inside of the structure on an upper floor a way to get out of that structure and get to a temporary refuge area. So he's laying on that spot right there. What that does for you is buys you time and lowers the priority on the latter part of the removing that buried egress. Okay, so if we look at that D side where that 3-season room was over there, we know we don't have to put ladders up on that side as important as we do on the B side where there is no porch roof or no barrier, or no safety zone for you, if you will. A guy bails out on the D side, he lands on that rooftop, he's in a relatively safe area. A guy gets over here and bails out, he's dropping 30, 40, 50 feet depending on what floor he's on, right? So that takes the priority of ladders off of the D side and puts the priorities of ladders onto the B side of the structure. Does that make sense? So we're looking at those kind of building issues and egress issues. In this building, let's go talk about this door right here. Screen doors are a pain no matter what, right? Fireground operations suck with screen doors. If I want to get hose lines in or out, they more often than not, they keep closing on me. My lines get pinched underneath there. They get charged, and now I can't open or close it, and now this becomes a barrier. So when you see this as part of your 360, take these things, if you can open them, and just get them open right off the bat. Get them out of the way. It takes you 5 seconds to do it. Just get it out of the way. Most screen doors are real easy to pop. They have little hinges here. You can take your Halligan tool, pop it, and get it off here and just toss it aside. This is a really, really nice one. It has a piano hinge on it. It ain't coming off easy. You don't have the time in your 360 to take care of this thing. So what you want to do is just maybe slide this up or tie it back along something so that it doesn't close on them. In our example here, we have a boarded up rear door, all right? Not uncommon for a lot of the areas we go to. What you want to do on these things, this is a barrier to egress. This is a designed way for people to get in and out. There's probably a hallway or something right on the other side of this, okay? So when you get here, if somebody's in trouble, they may find their way back here on the back side of this building. So you do need to remove these boarded up doors or boarded up windows, whatever you may have. When you do that though, because there's no hingeable door there you can close, you open up an opening that has air potentially moving through it. The last thing we want to do as a RIT team or a RAT team is open this up and allow air to move through it and move fire from where it's at to the area of egress that we're trying to protect. So when you take this, once you've knocked this down, if you've had to use a chainsaw or if you can push it in or whatever you do something to prevent the air from moving through it. And in this case, I can take this plywood after I've removed it and lay it right back up against here. It doesn't have to be tight, doesn't have to be secure, it just has to be something that prevents air from flowing through there easily. Does that make sense? If this is a door, not a plywood board up or whatever, you want to try the door, see if I can get in and out of it, all right? If I can't, we're going to force the door, and then we're going to close it back and ensure that it didn't latch on us. Everybody tracking that? Well, all we're trying to do is prevent the movement of air through there. Now let's go over to this window. This window has bars on it, all right? These are just done by training, just so we have it as a prop. That's not how they are. I leaned on it the other day and pulled them off, all right, on accident. So these will come off real easy. They're usually set into the mortar, right? They're set in there pretty good. But what I'm getting at here is you just took the time to force that door right there, and now you come across a window less than 5 feet from there that's got bars on it. Do I need to remove the bars on this window when that door right there has just been forced and is open for me? Is it important to remove these bars?
I would probably remove them if I got.
Yeah.
I've got enough numbers. I'm going to tell them get saw.
Yep.
Down.
So
Absolutely.
what I'm going to tell you is the answer is absolutely yes, because what you face out here, what you see out here is not what they're facing inside there. The conditions in there, they have no idea. One, they can't see if there's a door there. They have no idea what's there. So between this wall right here and that door, there could be a knee wall here, there could be furniture here, there could be a dresser, there could be anything there. There could be debris there, it doesn't matter. But when you're inside and you've determined it's time to get out, things are bad, you're looking for whatever you can to get out. And in this case, what you see is light. You look up and you're looking for the light, you see light, you're gonna go for that light. So you come here, you see this window, you take this window out, and you have these bars, you're in trouble. You're scared now, you don't know where to go. You can't go that way, you have no idea that there's a door there or another window here or whatever. So when you see these, no matter how close they are to the entrance you just made or the exit you just made, take these out. Every one of these are just as important because that 5 feet from here to that door might as well be 5 miles for that guy on the inside, all right? So yes, you absolutely do take them out. Glass, in and of itself, is not a barrier to egress. I can take my arm, I can take my helmet, I can take my halogen, I can take my ceiling hook, I can take furniture that I find in there, and I can take that glass without any issue whatsoever. But if this were a window air conditioning unit right here, that is a barrier to egress. So when you get back here, pull that air conditioning unit out of there. Now, all of these things we do damage. It's called secondary damage to these buildings to make it so we can fight fire in it. We don't want to do that kind of damage if we're just coming up on a food on the stove or something that's blissful like light smoke like what we're seeing right here. We don't want to do that kind of damage. But if you've got a well-seated fire like what we talked about on the front of the building here, in that case, you absolutely want to start doing these kind of actions to make the fire ground safer for our people on the inside. Remember, one of our priorities was the far side of the fire. The back door is always a good spot to start with that far side of the fire. Get that open, okay? So we're tracking here, right? We know we're going to take these no matter how close they are to the doors. We know we're going to take the windows and window air conditioning units out. When you take this, if you can lift this window up and reach in there and pull those curtains and stuff out of the way and get them down in that way, then close the window, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. Whatever, if there's screens or blinds or whatever. If you can do that, do it. But make sure you control that air movement and close it back when you're done. Lots of times they don't leave them locked and you can just lift them up, right? Everybody tracking there? Okay, look at this pool back here. Let's look at this backyard, this pool. So lots of houses have pools in their backyard. These pools are critical. We've already had firefighters fall into pools. This is a junk pool, but you could also have another, well-manicured pool or whatever. At night, in the dark, with smoke, it would be very easy for a person to come up onto this porch and fall into this pool. That would scare the bejesus out of you, right? You're down, you're in the water, you don't know what's going on. In this pool, I can stand up. It's 4 foot deep, I stand up, I can get out of it, right? But if this were an 8-foot pool with water in it, or it's got a cover over it and I fall into that soft cover and it wraps me up, that could be a true Mayday outside of the structure, and you can have firefighters killed drowning in a pool wrapped up in a cover, or get underneath it and we don't even know it, or a pool that's not taken care of is now full of green slime and nasty stuff. It could be bad for us. When you see this, what you're going to do is make sure the boss on the front knows, the district chief on the front knows, but also the safety officer knows, and put a blind call out to the companies working. Now, we're going to talk about, we've done our walk around. You've done your 360. You've gone around the entire structure. You're back to the front now, and you've met your company who's come up and brought all their rat tools and equipment. They put them down. Now we go to that E, that letter E. We've identified all of our egress routes and the barriers to egress. And now we look at our priority list, the 1 through 4 that we talked about in the beginning. And we're going to now assign functions and jobs to our crews and say, here's what we're going to do. So there's 6 of us, right? We talked about our staffing. We're going to say, you 3 guys right there, go to the C side of the structure, put a ladder to the 2nd floor, pop that rear door and get it open, and take the bars off the windows. The 3 of us, we're going to go to the B side. We're going to put a ladder to floors 1 and 2. We're going to force that man door next to the garage so that they can get in there. And we're going to notify the boss that there's a ground level entrance or walkout entrance from the basement directly to the fire. When we're done with that, we're going to come around to the front, and our priorities then are going to be that porch roof on the A side and the porch roof on the D side. So all that makes sense? I used to go around and say, what's your number 1 priority? What's your number 1 priority? And in the end, everybody had something different. But the bottom line is, we're officers. Our job is to lead. And if you go back and you give them direction, you give them a purpose, and you tell them what you want done, every single time they do something, every single time they pop a door, take a bar off, throw a ladder, they're making that building safer. What you don't want to do is go back and just sit on your haunches and disregard all the different barriers that are out there for egress. Everybody tracking me on that? Okay. So once you've done that, once you've thrown the ladder, once you've taken the bars off the window, get on the radio and in the blind say, Rat 3 to command, I've removed the bars on the windows on the C side. Rat 3 to all companies, there's a ladder on the Delta side, 2nd floor. Because when you're the first in company, when you're stretching that first hose line, or you're the first truck and you go in, the building always looks completely different once you've come out than what it was when you first got there. All right, because now there's been people there to affect and do things to that building. The rat company's thrown ladders, but if they throw a ladder and the people on the inside don't know about it, it's useless. And you can't see it from the outside. So what we want to do is put that out over the air and let the crews on the inside hear that on the radio and know that they have that ability to do. Okay? Questions on that? Okay, let's shift focus here for a second. Yes, question?
The question I do have, are they advising the rat officer to put that out, or is the rat officer, once you get everything done and you're back at command, you sit at this command, put that out?
No, so it doesn't even have to be the rat officer. The group that does it, just get on the radio, say I've got a ladder to the 2nd floor C side. Okay. It does not have to be, you do it immediately as soon as you've done it. You do it right away. So it does not have to be the rat officer to put it out. It's whoever did it, do it and put it over the radio as soon as you finish it and get it done. Okay? All right. Remember, our number 1 priority prior to the Mayday was to remove the barriers to egress. We did a 360 to determine what the egress routes are. And in that 360, we looked at what those barriers were. Then we came back, we made a plan, and we addressed it. And we said, you, and you do this. And we started removing those barriers. At some point, if our worst case scenario happens and a Mayday goes out, our function, our primary purpose leaves. It is no longer removing those barriers to egress, but it now becomes we want to locate and find that firefighter that put the Mayday out and bring them air. We never taught in the RAT program that your primary purpose as a RAT team was to remove the firefighter. We always taught your job is to find that firefighter, get them air, and then you've bought them time. Air is the critical issue. If you look at those cheat sheets that we gave you, the ones for the chief officers, always say, get the firefighter air, get him air, and put the fire out. The fire is the problem. He would not be in the situation he was in if it were not for the fire, all right? He was in the building because it was on fire. The building collapsed or he got lost because it was on fire and creating smoke. So if I remove the fire, I've removed the problem. And now all I need to do is get him air. The conditions get better from that point on, right? So if I can find that firefighter and get that firefighter air, I've done nothing but good there, okay? Now, there are a lot of ways to do that, but one of the key things to know, one of the key things to remember is that while that firefighter has air, you can talk to them and communicate with them and tell them to do things that are going to make their situation better. Once they run out of air, they start breathing hydrogen cyanide, carbon monoxide, phosgene gas, and they start doing weird things. All of the line of duty desks, when you read them, when firefighters are out of air and they start breathing all those products, they do crazy things. If you remember, Brett Tarver in Phoenix went up and punched his RIT team in the face, knocked him down. If you remember, John Tivetin in Kansas City started taking all of his gear off. He just took his coat off, his pack off, and everything, just laid down and did weird things. But if you can communicate with them prior to them running out of air, you can tell them to do things that will make their conditions and situation better. Tell them to crawl and stop on a wall. Get to a wall, because searches are easier when they're on the wall, right? Get them out of the center of the room and get them to a wall. Ask them to do something as stupid as, please describe to me the location you're in. What do you got? And they're going to think you're an idiot when you ask that question, but feed them what material you're looking for. What kind of floor are you on? Are you on concrete? Are you on carpet? Are you on tile? What are you on? So now if he comes back and says, I'm on carpet, if you're crawling through this building and you're on tile or concrete or whatever, don't waste your time there. Go until you get to carpet and spend more time on that carpet. We've already told him to go to a wall, and now we know he's on a wall in a room with carpet. So then I say, what do you see? What kind of things do you see? If he can relate to you that he sees the emergency lights on the vehicles on this structure, you know he's on the A side of the building. So you know when you get up to the top of those steps, you're going to turn towards the A side, you're going to look for carpeted floor, and you're going to look for him there. If he says, I hear chainsaws above me, you're going to look to see where's your truck on the roof. And now he knows you've narrowed it down now from this entire structure to along a wall on the A side with carpet below wherever the chainsaws are operating. Are you tracking what I'm getting at here? So everything you can get from them, but the minute he or she runs out of air, you've lost all that ability. So it's very, very critical to stay in contact with them and give them things. Tell them to turn their passive device on. Tell them to turn their flashlight on and shine it towards the ceiling. Tell them to do all those kind of things while you can and while they have air, because you won't be able to do that once they run out of air. All right, any questions?